Hello, thank you for tuning in. My name is Jen Camella, and today I'd like to share with you my journey discovering patterns among popular change methods, how they relate to the 8 elements of change method design, and some helpful tools I use during the process. Let's begin by checking the table of contents. I've included a table of contents here for an easy roadmap to my presentation. Here, you can see the items I just described. Before we begin discussing patterns among different change elements, I'd like to share my view on whole systems collaboration and change. When the term wholeness is applied to a system, we refer to the regularly interdependent parts as forming a unified whole, interacting according to the influence of related forces. When we apply change to the concept of a whole system, we know it then means that the entire system is involved in creating itself anew. This forms the basis for change methods. Because we need a way to involve every department, group, and person for a change effort to be successful across a system, it's necessary to put a well thought out plan in place that makes sense for that specific system. This is an excerpt from David Marquette's graphic facilitation, What is Leadership? Now, let's go a layer deeper, because leadership plays a large role in change efforts, as well as the regular operation of any system. We see a very important concept presented here by David Marquette. How do we find a way to embed greatness, which I equate to the capacity for self-directed change, into the people and process of a system, and further separate that greatness from the personality of the leader? The system and its people need to understand that change is not initiated by any one leader, consultant, or person. It is initiated and completed by an agreement among the system's members to choose or create a plan for change and then successfully execute it. So today, I'll present my formula for how I picked out some key themes to include in a change method, how they relate to the 8 design elements of change, and how to ensure change is a collaborative effort and not a top-down, leader-driven effort. Let's begin with my process for finding patterns among 9 change methods. You can see the 9 change methods I've studied here. Of the 9, 6 of them were required, and I chose 3 additional ones: Workout, Cycle of Resolution, and Six Sigma. When you open the change handbook, you quickly realize that it's 1, Taylor Swift accidentally collaborating with her ex Joe Jonas and making a hit single that brings the Jonas Brothers back forever, from being the encyclopedia of change. And with such a wealth of information at my fingertips, my interest in this assignment became digging in to see if I had ever heard of any of the change methods, to see if I had ever used any of the change methods, and to read about change methods I hadn't heard of before. When you're looking to cross-reference at least 3 different sources of information, it's important to choose a helpful tool so your finished product is easy to read. I chose Trello, an online app for creating lists, for help with my affinity diagram. This is a full view of my affinity diagram. I began by creating a list for each of the 8 design elements. Then I created a color label for each of the 9 change methods. Once I had that set up, I began to study each change method and pick out words or phrases that I thought were germane to one of the design elements. These got labeled according to which change method they described, as I noted them below one of the design elements. This process took quite a long time, but was a good way to be introduced to the change methods, and I enjoyed categorizing and grouping the information. Once I was done with my affinity diagram, I began to think about my mind map. Since my task, as described by Dr. Katie in the instructions, is to develop a presentation describing how the 8 design elements were used to uncover the common and unique characteristics of a select set of approaches, I thought it would be best to use my mind map to show the common and unique ideas I pulled for each design element. My mind map is different from the affinity diagram because it's grouped according to the common and unique characteristics of the change methods as they relate to each design element. From the mind map, I could now start to pick out some of the more prominent features of the change methods. So what have the design elements taught me? What are the themes I've picked up from the change methods? Let's begin again with David Marquette.
I was trained for one submarine, my guys were trained to do what they were told. That's a deadly combination. We all know organizations where people just follow the leader into disastrous situations. So I got my guys together and I said, hey, we got a problem here.
David Marquette says here that the people on his submarine were trained to follow his orders, and that presented a large problem. He is a new captain, unfamiliar with the sub, and they only have a limited amount of time to ensure the safety of the submarine before embarking on a mission. Here we can see an inviting issue. There's an opportunity to work with a diverse group of people, create a story, make sense of complexity, solve a major issue, and do it fast. These are the common themes that stuck out to me the most from the first design element, invitation.
So we talked about it, and they said, okay, there's only one logical solution. We figured it out. You, they're pointing at me, you, shut up. And I thought about it, and you know what? They were right. So at that point, I vowed never to give another order. And if you came down on my submarine, it would have been very confusing, because you couldn't have pointed. It would have been hard to say, well, who's the captain here? Because you wouldn't have seen me giving orders. What we replaced it with was intent. Instead of giving instructions, if you want your people to think, don't give instructions, give intent.
Aha! What a powerful message that speaks to my top theme from the design element of purpose, empowering the individual and the group. Through empowerment, we also see relationships and connectedness emerge. There's a powerful purpose to solving David's problem, empowering other people to make decisions, build relationships, and connect.
On another submarine, there was one guy in charge, one guy giving orders, one guy thinking, and 134 people doing what they're told. I don't care how smart you are. On my submarine, I got 135 thinking, active, passionate, creative, proactive, taking initiative people. It's a tidal wave. You don't stand a chance.
This is ultimately the loudest theme from the design element of system, to include all participants in active thinking and decision making. There's another large element of system worth mentioning, because it's important to note that while the whole system should be engaged, there is still a leader present who may retain some crucial authorities, albeit not ones that detract from the empowerment of the individuals or groups.
I did retain one order. The final order to launch a weapon, a torpedo or a missile, I kept with me, because I felt that since that was going to result in the deaths of other human beings, that I didn't want that on anyone's conscience but mine. That was my moral and ethical responsibility.
And so now we come to the design element of experience. The most common theme from this design element has to do with finding a common ground and determining what should be. By empowering individuals and groups, David is able to flip his conversations and find common ground.
So they would come to me, hey, what do you want me to do? Well, left full rotor, steady course 255. No! So what are we trying to accomplish here today? Well, we're trying to get in position so that when the enemy submarine comes through, okay, so where do you think we should position the ship? Maybe over here. Good idea, go there. You give intent to them, and they give intent to you. So my officer stopped requesting permission. And every other submarine, Captain, request permission to submerge the ship. Submerge the ship. Submerge the ship, aye! On Santa Fe, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. Very well.
The most common element of technology used across multiple change methods happened to be in person, followed closely by large-scale virtual meetings. Could that be because the most common element of purpose is to empower individuals to make connections and build relationships? You can find most evidence for these change methods in supporting books and articles, which emerged as the most common theme in my research. And so we come to values. And values are so crucially important because they define the behaviors by which your system operates. And this is where David comes back in, because he shows us in this next clip how a cooperative and not competitive environment, an environment that encourages trust, and an environment that gives control are what he most values. These represent the top themes from my research on change method values.
Actually went another step. Then I got smarter and I said, when the officer said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship, I would ask him, well, what do you think I'm thinking right now? And he'd look at me, hard to tell. I'm guessing you're wondering whether it's safe. Bingo! I said, well, convince me it's safe. He said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. All men are below, hatches are shut, ship's rigged for dive. I checked the bottom deck. the submarines in the water that's been assigned to us. Then later I would ask them, is it the right thing to do? And they would say, well, yes, sir, because our mission requires that we... And these are the two pillars that I think support this idea of giving control. These are the two pillars that need to be in place.
Finally, we get to go forward and achieve greatness, because the most common theme of mastery is organic improvement, when your system can continually improve and solve its own problems without needing help or direction from the outside.
Solution. Move the authority to where the information is. Create the environment so that those people are out there making decisions as if the CEO were standing right behind them. And if it's not the same decision, it's actually a better decision because they have the information. And not only will you get better speed of execution because now you don't have this delay, what happens is those people feel like they matter because they're thinking. You engender thinking. You create the environment for thinking. And by doing so, you will achieve the greatest thing possible. You will have achieved greatness, not because of the deeds and acts that you did, but because you set an environment where the people around you and their families and their schools and their organizations and their businesses, they've achieved greatness. That will be the greatest thing of all. Go forth and be great.
Our tools for achieving greatness cannot go unrecognized. We know that affinity diagrams were first used in the 1960s by Jiro Kawakita and are helpful for categorizing information and developing patterns. This is reaffirmed as evident from my use of the affinity diagram. I had heard and used mind maps before this assignment, and so I find them to be helpful when brainstorming possible solutions to an issue or developing ideas for content. Generally, a mind map could start with an image, word, or phrase, can be colorful or have no color, can have branches or bubbles, can look like anything. Generally puts an image with concept so it's easier to retain information, and so people with concept retention find it helpful. And you can keep yourself easily organized on the computer using a mind map to link multiple apps like your Google Calendar or specific files related to a project. Although Tony Buzan is credited for his use of mind maps publicly, mind maps have been used since the early 1200s. I believe in the realm of organization development, mind maps and affinity diagrams can be useful tools for helping teams work through the steps of a process, assign work, or brainstorm ideas for new products. The tools I used as listed here would be helpful for all of those, and I'm sure many more purposes. To conclude, I planned to learn about change methods, but ended up learning so much more. The deeper conclusions I was able to draw from relating the common change method themes for each design element to David Marquette's graphic facilitation left me with a powerful outline I can now use to go back and determine how I would enact change in the future, which I think adds value to my OD library assignment. I learned 2 new tools to use at home and at work, and I now have a close to encyclopedia of change methods to choose from and an understanding of the underlying methodology for creating them. I now have achieved greatness, as David Marquette would say, having completed this assignment. And now I extend the same remarks to you. Go forth and achieve greatness.